How's it going, geeks? Welcome back to Talk Geekly. It has been a while. After a month-long hiatus, we are back. I am Pendragon here, the resident Kryptonian, of course, with my good friend, the Gotham Knight Job for a Cody, and we are ready for an exciting episode of comics news, video game stuff, and don't forget, Captain Marvel.
We definitely took this time off very productively.
Yeah, life, right? I mean, that's all I can say is things happen, and sometimes you have to step back and kind of deal with those things. So not only to get rid of the stress and pressure of what you might be going through, but also when you got projects that you're really passionate about, it's not good to try to attack them with anything less than a clear mind. And I think we both felt like we needed to clear our minds and kind of get things on track so we can give you the best podcast that we possibly can.
Absolutely.
So I think we're going to jump right into it. Let's not waste any time. I think, Cody, you want to hit our friends here with some DC knowledge, right?
Absolutely. We are gunning hard for DC. What I'm going to be doing is kind of like a recap of a couple of issues over the last couple of weeks. I'm not going to do every issue I was running with, but I am going to touch base on a couple that have been more important, that I've kind of been staying more in touch with over the last couple of podcasts. We're going to be starting off with Damage 14. Now, the last issue, Batman and the Justice League got a hold of Damage. Very hard to contain. Damage is pretty much DC's Hulk. I cannot stress that enough, except he has a 1 hour time limit. We've seen Damage get dropped on this island of monsters, and that's it.
Yeah, didn't he fall out of a helicopter, right? Was that it?
Yeah. And it's pretty much... Think Godzilla. You got this huge dragon, and we're talking huge, like a skyscraper size. And then you got pretty much like the equivalent of King Kong. And Damage is going head to head with both of them. And it's one of those things where it's really awesome to see this beast go up against monsters that really test his true potential. And we're not talking like his fight with Superman. Like, these are just ginormous, just monsters. I cannot even stress this enough. And we are introduced to this new guy. Fortunately, I don't have his name. What I say, it was like Bongo Brad or something like that.
Bongo Brad, yeah.
Or Congo. It was something along those lines. It's been a little bit since I read the issue, but we come to find out that Ethan meets this guy, and this guy locks himself in a cage, and that's all I'm going to drop on that because spoilers. We don't want to ruin it for you. But Damage 14 definitely is bringing the heat. It's kind of a little bit lackluster compared to the last couple of issues, but it definitely has potential to set the ground for later issues and really vamp up the potential for Damage and his potential joining of the Justice League. Well, we'll just have to see what happens in Damage 15.
So do you think he is still going to end up in the Justice League, or do you think they might throw a twist somewhere?
I think as much effort they put into Damage, introducing him fighting the Suicide Squad, introducing him fighting Batman and Superman, I think it's one of those things they really want to draw out the story, a redemption story, if you will, because he's more or less of a monster when he's in the Damage form. So I think they really want to draw that out and try to get Damage to control himself, pretty much like Marvel did with the Hulk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying.
So I think we're going to see that happen in later issues, and then he will join the Justice League. But you don't want to put anything past DC because, Lord knows DC is filled with twists and turns.
So what do you got for the next book?
The next book is Batman 65. I cannot stress enough, man. Oh my God. When I read this, it blew my mind. We seen the connection from Flash, because this issue has the Flash and Batman in it, okay? And we seen the connection with the button, which the button is what leads into Doomsday Clock. So the button gets brought up in this issue, and it was so fantastic. I was so stoked when you just seen the Flash just mention, like, they're trying to break us apart just like they did with the button, because the Flash and Batman are DC's two greatest detectives. So they're... whatever force is behind this, which I believe is Dr. Manhattan, I believe we're going to see everything come together and just fit a perfect puzzle. We see these two fighting, verbally fighting. We're introduced to Gotham Girl and Gotham, and these are very explosive villains, very literally explosive. These guys literally explode when they use up all their powers. And without spoiling too much, we see a very, very heated showdown between the two. And the Flash is separated from Batman. So Batman's all alone fending against, a whole slew of enemies right now. While, the Flash is trying to take care of Gotham and Gotham Girl. And you could say the ending's rather explosive. I will say this, Batman and the Flash do get in a verbal altercation, and there's a little bit of a physical tension. I don't want to spoil too much. We want to encourage readers to pick up these books themselves, to dive into.
Alrighty. So moving on, you got Batman Beyond 29, right?
Yes, with Batman Beyond 28, we were
28 or 29?
Well, yeah, 29. But I was just doing a recap on 28.
Gotcha.
With Batman Beyond 28, we were introduced to the Joker. What a friendly face. In this issue, Terry, which is the new Batman, of course, Bruce Wayne is a very old man in this series. Terry is going up against the Joker. We see Matt as the new Robin, and this is groundbreaking, guys. Tied up in front of the Joker, and the Joker has a crowbar and is going to bash his brains in.
Uh-oh, now, flashback.
What's that make you think of, Penn?
Man, when he wrecked Jason Todd's face.
Mm-hmm. And of course, for anyone who's new, this triggers Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne's watching from a camera because Joker is broadcasting this, and Batman is watching this, and he's just crying because it triggers him because Jason Todd got beaten to a pulp with the crowbar. So we see Batman. He's Bruce Wayne. Excuse me. I have such a hard time distinguishing the two with this particular arc. Bruce Wayne is pretty much begging Matt to just give up all the secrets he knows. We then see a casket, and you see the Joker gang around him getting ready to set it on fire. And here comes Terry to save the day. But Lord and behold, Matt is not in that casket. We then see the Joker enter the Batcave, where Bruce Wayne is. And that's all I'm going to lead right there, because we're trying to keep this as spoiler free. But I want you to know, I don't think this ends the way you think it's going to end.
All right. And for those out there in podcast world, this issue in the cover, the tagline is The Last Robin. And it's got a question mark, exclamation point. So like Cody said, leave it up to your imagination. Go get that book. Find out what happens.
Now, prepare yourself. Like I said, DC, the last couple of weeks has pulled no punches. They are just going full, just chaotic in the DC universe. And I am so excited to talk about Heroes in Crisis issue number 6. Now with Heroes in Crisis, we are talking about Sanctuary, which I forgot to mention this. In Batman 65, they talk about Sanctuary. Sanctuary gets brought up. So that's another cool thing, how DC is just tying everything together. I just love how everything is finally starting to come together. Sanctuary is a place for the superheroes to come and unwind. We haven't seen a lot of the more personable issues related to saving people. You got people who are, very depressed, very suicidal, having, panic attacks and triggers. Harley Quinn, with her abusive relationship with the Joker, we see a lot of that in this issue. We see the inner working of the Sanctuary in an insane depth. It really brings the arc in a more emotional feeling. And I was really excited to read it. I thought this really is bringing us to the climax of the arc in such a beautiful manner. You see Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn's relationship develop and start to grow. Poison Ivy's like, you're not supposed to be here. And then, Harley Quinn, she doesn't listen to rules, and they're there. And Poison Ivy's helping Harley Quinn work through the abusive relationship she endured with the Joker. You see them in this like holographic room, and they're just killing copy after copy of Jokers. In one particular arc, in one particular panel, you see just a pile of dead Jokers.
That's pretty badass.
Fantastic, dude. And readers, if you have not had a chance, please do yourself a favor and look into the relationship of the Joker and Harley Quinn, and just see how Harley Quinn worked her way out of that abusive state. It's something I feel like, and every reader who enjoys the Joker and Harley Quinn, really, you really need to do yourself a favor and kind of discover that history. We see Wally West and his issues, and develop a lot more, and it gets a lot more insane. We're introduced. This might be a new character. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really read much of him or seen much of him. I think his name's Narc. It's like Gnarrak, something like that. Like a barbaric caveman. In his hologram, he's like back in barbaric times. He's beating down woolly mammoths and saber-tooths and other cavemen with rocks, and he's having emotional triggers and flashbacks dealing with that. And it was mind-blowing to dive into this issue. And I will leave you with this because we've been really curious what's been going on. You see a big thing with Harley Quinn in Booster Gold in this. Now, I'm not gonna leak who did what, but I will say this could be the key for what we're searching with Sanctuary and what happened. Do yourself a favor. If you've been reading any of the Heroes in Crisis, be sure to pick up issue number 6. And like I said, this ties in. Batman 65 tied this in and the button. So all of this is like confirmed, 100% confirmed now, happening in the DC universe, all in the same universe. So do yourself a favor, pick up Heroes in Crisis issue number 6. I will say this is probably one of the more in-depth and emotionally riveting ones I've read so far out of all 6 issues. So I would definitely give it high praise. Now,
sounds good.
We are getting ready to go into one of my favorite arcs, bi-monthly. Been waiting a long time for this one. Doomsday Clock issue number 6. Whew, Pen, I don't even know where to begin with this. We last left off with Firestorm.
That's number 9.
Or I said, did I say issue number 6?
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, my bad.
I just want to make sure our audio listeners
Yes.
get the correct issue number.
Doomsday Clock issue number 9. My apologies about that. So Doomsday Clock issue number 8, we see Firestorm just explode. We leave off with him exploding. We have no idea what happened. Superman was trying to defend Firestorm. And we have a huge anti-Superman movement going on in this comic. It is insane. It is insane because Superman is, the Man of Wonder, the hero we all rely on. And I'm a Batman fan, so, take that for, what you will. We start off with this issue. Superman is down. Superman is down for the count. Heavily injured. Not something I would really, imagine. I'm not very familiar with Firestorm, but he is one of the strongest metahumans. That's, what was confirmed in this issue. And you see him just damaged, injured, being cared for and guarded by Lois Lane. My man Batman, they found Batman in a wreckage of rubble, just annihilated. Both of DC's main characters out for the count. Now we get a flashback to Dr. Manhattan. As you all know, if you've been staying up with this arc, Dr. Manhattan has transported himself from Earth to Mars, pretty much building a base there. For our readers out there, the issue for this is you see this golden ring, and I am trying to find out, because in the issue of Damage 14, there was a golden ring, and I can't tell if this is that ring or the ring that was involved with the button. I didn't have enough time to research it, but this ring is pointed out for a reason. Now we see Dr. and he does a flashback. He admits to moving the Green Lantern from Alan Scott, I think in 1941. It's insane. He does all these flashbacks. He does a flashback to 1941. He travels back in time. He travels to the future. I think it was like 3041 or something, and he's talking about something. He keeps like time traveling. He's trying to search for an answer. Because Dr. Manhattan, he stops like being able to like, I guess tell the future. He leads off with Superman. That's the last thing he knows. He doesn't know if Superman kills him or if he kills Superman. So then we get another panel and we just see teams and teams and teams of all these DC superheroes. We're talking like the Green Lanterns, the Bat Family. Oh man, the Teen Titans, all the mega superheroes you could just envision. Even Firestorm heading to Mars. Because we're about to see showdown. We see Guy Gardner. And if you guys are not familiar with Guy Gardner, he is a really brash and a really just upfront and brutal Green Lantern. This guy does not hold back. If you were to like rub him the wrong way, he would definitely be the first person to take a swing. And we see that. We see that in this issue. They confront Dr. Manhattan and, you know, they try to talk things out. They're trying to figure things out. Dr. Manhattan's like, I could see you guys are very confused and you guys are asking, or you guys are wanting answers for questions you don't know how to ask. Guy Gardner does not give it a hoot, I guess.
In typical Guy Gardner fashion.
Goes up and just slugs Dr. Manhattan. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God. For readers and listeners out there, Dr. Manhattan has the ability to pretty much disintegrate humans, superheroes, at a like atomic level. He could just snap his fingers and change the world as we see it. He could bring people back in time, future, and we see that happen in this issue. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm not going to go any further because I'll link one thing too. We see Lex Luthor. Sneak into where Superman is laying down for his intensive care. I'm not going to talk too much on that too. We're not really trying to spoil things here, but I will say this. This battle is intense. And without spoiling too much, this is probably going to be one of my, and I might be a little bit biased here, but this is probably going to be one of my favorite arcs. And I will say this issue right here is leading into everything we've wanted. Maybe issue 6, maybe issue 7, maybe issue 8. You weren't very, fond of. You weren't very particular of. Maybe the pacing in the comic itself was a little bit slow, but this issue, they're not hitting the brakes. It's going full force. It's a train that is not stopping, and you are doing yourself a grave injustice by not reading Doomsday issue number 9. And if you have not started the Doomsday arc, now is a great time because you have 2 months to catch up until Doomsday issue number 10. So without spoiling too much.
Yeah, and that's how, sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're fine.
When we were prepping for today's show, I was just, I hit the floor, man. I felt like I did myself a disservice, like you just said, because I was getting hit with that delay. DC was delaying the book, and I totally kind of spaced it off and didn't even think to see if it finally hit shelves. So I'm very disappointed that I did not get to read this issue, but I can't wait to crack it open and see exactly what you're talking about. And again, I always like to try to give somewhat of a visual stimuli for those podcast people out there. Cody talked about a golden ring, and I think it's very important to point out the ring in question on the cover of Doomsday Clock number 9 is a Legionnaire's ring. Now, this is the Legion of Superheroes. They are from, the year 3000, something like that. They are very far into the future. They're basically founded upon the ideal of Superman and how he did so much good, and he was this, symbol of hope for the entire universe. So they're like the Justice League 2.0. And that's the golden ring in question. So that's got me very intrigued to see how the Legion of Superheroes ties in to the Doomsday Clock arc.
Yeah, and I cannot stress this enough. I cannot. Guy Gardner punches Dr. Manhattan. I can't talk about it anymore. Let's move on to Batman issue 66. Because if I talk about Doomsday Clock anymore, I'm going to have to spoil some stuff. Now with Batman issue 66, it's a little bit different. We let off, in issue 65 with Batman and the Flash. This time we see Batman and Catwoman. Now, as you guys all know, in issue 50, Batman and Catwoman was supposed to get married. And that wedding was called off. Ever since then, it's kind of been a slow pacing and kind of been a little bit convoluted. We've been introduced to a lot of different superheroes, a lot of different just craziness happening in Batman's world. With issue 66, I could tell you it gets a lot better. We have a flashback where Batman and Selina meet for the first time in Batman Year One. For everyone, who's not hip to it, Batman Year One's pretty much just like the DC Rebirth. They pretty much just, that was how they introduced Batman. And he met Selina because he was fighting this male who was trying to pick up a child for prostitution. And Selina jumped down because, the girl in question, drew a knife, went at Batman. Batman went to deflect it. Selina did not take very kindly to that. And then we just see this flashback. It's really interesting. I have to pull up the name because I want to make sure, I pronounce it right. But we see Vic Sage, he's a faceless man talking to Selina. And we see this whole entire timeline of different enemies that Batman has encountered, different trials and tribulations that Batman has encountered, different flashbacks to different arcs. And this whole entire arc, I think, might be pointing to some sort of reunion. I can't pinpoint it. I don't want to spoil the end, This comic in particular wasn't very, what's the word I'm looking for? Attention grabbing. It was more of a informative issue, if you would say. And it's one of those things where it's really, I think, pinpointing to Batman and Catwoman getting back together. And that would make sense because DC received a lot of backlash for calling off the wedding.
Oh yeah, they
Batman,
did.
Yeah, and it would be, some sort of a more smarter approach for DC to kind of take that and run with it. But without really kind of spoiling that either, I'll leave off with that. I will say Batman issue 65 brought the heat. Batman 66, maybe not so much, but it's nice to have issues that go a little bit more in depth with what's going on in the mental exhaustion of Batman. So
now, do you think maybe they toned it back this issue because we are getting so close to the 1000th issue of Detective Comics, and maybe they want to save all the big blockbuster things for that Batman book?
While that's a very, very valid point, I will say I think it's more trying to reestablish the connection between Catwoman and Batman.
Okay, because that makes a lot of sense.
With Batman Detective 1000, it's going to be an explosive issue. And then rumor has it from some of the news I've read, they're going to re-roll the clock and it's going to start way, at the very beginning again. Yep. So we're not going to have a 1001. We're going to start fresh.
And a lot of people aren't happy about that. And you can't blame them. Comics has been doing this for a long time. Basically, what they like to do is after a certain amount of years, they basically start back at one. Thank you, Brian McKnight. But they start back at one. They kind of want to help new readers be able to start a series fresh. And at the same time, it's also somewhat of a play to collectors, because a lot of people, they go into comics thinking they're going to find that issue one that's going to be worth so much money. And unfortunately, I don't hate to burst your bubble. If you don't have an issue one that's from the 70s or even earlier, you're not going to make a butt ton of money. You might get a couple $100, if that, but you're not looking at breaking the bank.
I want to say the first detective issue and the first Action Comics are what, like $500,000?
At least. Oh yeah, at least.
Yeah. And that's with probably pages missing and front covers ripped off. I think I can't remember. There was a really good I think near mint issue that just sold for an outrageous amount of money. Like,
Yeah. So, well, it'll be interesting to see where Detective Comics goes after issue 1000. But I, not being a huge Batman fan, am still looking forward to that because it's a milestone for comics in general, not just Batman. Kind of like last year when Superman had his 1000th issue with Action Comics. It's nice to see, there's Batman right behind him. The two cornerstones, the linchpins of the DC universe. So that'll be cool.
But hey, enough of DC Comics, Pen. It's been a couple weeks. Let's hear what's going down in the Marvel world.
Yeah, it's been a while. And you guys know where I left off. And for those of you who have not caught the podcast before, I am currently balls deep in Uncanny X-Men. Real quick recap. The X-Men were up against probably the most powerful foe they've ever had to deal with in the form of Nathan Summers. And he did not hold any punches. He was able to, more or less by the end of the 10-issue story arc called X-Men Disassembled, he did just that. In Uncanny X-Men number 11, we are now in a world without the X-Men. They're gone. No one can seem to figure out what exactly happened to them. And it's a really, really troubling time for a recently returned X-Man, Scott Summers, good old Cyclops. So with Uncanny X-Men number 11, what's really, really nice about this book is you actually have not one, not two, but you have three completely, well, not completely different, but three different interwoven stories. It's basically one story told from three different perspectives. And I think the writing is really, really good. The way you see the story unfold as to how Cyclops is dealing with the fact that not only is he back from the dead, he's back from the dead, and everyone he knows and has ever loved is missing. They're gone. The mansion is just a pile of rubble, and there's no sign of hope anywhere. So this in 11 specifically, like I said, the writer Matthew Rosenberg, he delivers just the most amazing story that keeps you on the edge of your seat because you really want to relate to Cyclops in a way that, at least for me, I've never had before. I've always been a Wolverine guy. It's always been kind of like, damn you, Cyclops. Why'd you get the girl? Why are you the leader? But like I said, I feel for him. And this specific issue really, really ends in a cool way because issues 1 through 10 of Uncanny, as I had stated in the podcast before, Marvel found a way to create an X-Men story arc that did not have Wolverine and really had it somehow still take a hold of you. And in issue 11, we got Wolverine back, baby. He's jumping back into the story, back into the X-Men fold, and he does it in such a dramatic way. I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say Wolverine is the best there is at what he does. You know, there is no one who could do what Wolverine does. And that leads us in to issue 12. So we have the reunion of Cyclops and Logan, the Wolverine, and they are working together to basically try to uncover what has happened to the X-Men. Okay. And keep in mind, the world is now reeling from basically the devastation at the hands of Nathan Summers. So mutants are hated more now than ever before. But yeah, they're being rounded up. And they're being taken to these, I wouldn't say concentration camps. They are more or less like a concentration camp. They're basically large bunkers where the government is performing scientific experiments on the mutants that they're collecting. And they're actually able to uncover a rather sinister plot that actually leads to the death of an X-Man, but also the reunion of the Summers brothers. So Cyclops actually manages to find Havoc, as well as Magic, Wolfsbane, and a bunch of other former X-Men, current X-Men, who were being held in these camps. Long story short, they have a really nice escape. And it's actually funny to think about how at one point in this book, Wolverine's all like the idea man. He's the guy who comes up with a plan. And I love how he's like, man, the one time I try to make a plan and he just starts cutting people up, you know, because he was trying to be all stealthy and, you know, not go in there, claws ablazing. It didn't work out the way he wanted. So there's still so much that we don't understand at the end of this issue that you just are left with a lot of questions. And for me, I like that. I think that this arc, this new arc in the Uncanny X-Men series is staying in a good spot where I want it to be. And that transitions into Uncanny X-Men 13, where, okay, Cyclops basically has a new X-Man team full of a bunch of what some might say are supporting cast, you know, kind of sideline characters, but there's still some pretty powerful ones. I mean, Magic has always been a very, very powerful member of the X-Men. And for those of you that don't know, that is Colossus's sister. She's a pretty powerful psychic witch, so to speak. And this issue, basically, Cyclops decides, you know what? The world hates us more than they ever have before. We're basically going to die here really soon. They'll either catch us or some crazy villain's going to just put an end to us. So let's go out in a blaze of glory. He pulls out a list, a nice legal pad, and it's a list of every single villain or villainous faction that they have ever faced. And he tells them, we're going to get them all. Every single one of them. We're going to leave a legacy. We're going to change. We're either going to change what society thinks of us, or we're going to die trying. And I think that was really, really powerful and really exciting, because some of the names, of course, Magneto, right? The first X-Men villain. You got Apocalypse, the Extremist. I mean, there's just so many different names on this list. So it's got me hyped up to see where this arc is going to head in the next few issues. And issue 14 actually does go on sale March 20th. So definitely make sure you pick that up, because if you are a fan of the X-Men, you are doing yourself a bad service if you're missing out on Uncanny X-Men. It's just really, it's action packed. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. A lot of action, and still at the same time, there's some poignant moments, especially dealing with Cyclops. So moving on from Uncanny X-Men, this is actually something I have been waiting for since I heard about it. I got done with Cosmic Ghost Rider's miniseries, and I was just kind of like, man, when do I get to see him again? Well, I got to read Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History. And I know Cody was pretty excited for the Cosmic Ghost Rider stuff, and I think this is something that he should definitely give a read and take a look at it. But I always thought, well, what are they gonna do in this book? How's this gonna affect main universe continuity? Well, I thought Marvel actually had a rather clever way of doing that. In this book, we actually see Frank Castle, the Cosmic Ghost Rider. He's not just the Cosmic Ghost Rider, by the way. He is the Spirit of Vengeance, the Herald of Galactus, and of course, he was one time Thanos' right-hand man. This guy's super powerful. I mean, when you think about it, that's the power cosmic, that's infinity power, like that's a shit ton of power. But what they do is they have Frank show up at his family's house just a few hours before they are actually murdered. And I'm thinking, oh man, he's gonna save his family from being murdered. That's gonna change the whole timeline. And it'll probably be way more drastic than we think. Well, actually, not in this issue. That's not where Marvel goes. Instead, Frank pretends to be a family member, and he just spends some quality time with his son. And I think it's really cool because he's sharing superhero stories with little Frankie. And this is basically where we tie into he destroys Marvel history. Now, I'm not sure if everything that he's telling little Frankie actually happened, or if maybe he's just making these stories up. But you basically find out he was a member of the Fantastic Five. Yeah, the Fantastic Five, not Fantastic Four, because at some point in time, he actually crashed in to the shuttle that was being flown by the Fantastic Four. And that's what caused them to get their powers. And he stuck around with them and kind of became a member of the team. And they felt he was a little bit too sadistic. You know, at one point, they straight up say, you're a murderer and we don't want you on the team. This book is really funny in the way that the stories that Frank is telling us, you can clearly see that they are one-sided. They're coming from his perspective. And that's very evident in any story having to deal with the Silver Surfer. Because there's a one point that just, I could not stop laughing. As Frank is telling the story about how the Silver Surfer and Galactus interact, every time the Silver Surfer is talking, he just sounds like a lonely, sad tryhard. Like he's begging Galactus to be his friend. He's like, but I want to be your friend. And Galactus is like, I don't need no friends. And then later on, Galactus is talking about, oh, this is Frank. He's my friend. And Norrin Rad, the Silver Surfer, just freaks out. And he's like, what do you mean he's your friend? You could be friends with everybody, but you can't be friends with me? Like, it's really funny. Like I said, the way the Ghost Rider is basically playing the Silver Surfer. And the reason I think that's so funny is it's evident that the Ghost Rider still has a little bit of resentment towards the Silver Surfer for breaking his face. Back in the Thanos story arc, Silver Surfer was able to wield the hammer of Thor. And using that hammer, he busted Cosmic Ghost Rider something good. So you can tell Frank's a little salty from that. And he's just kind of having some fun at the Silver Surfer's expense. This is just a lighthearted comic book. You know, I don't think that you need to take it too seriously. But I will say, the end of this issue, something happens that kind of points us in a direction that, okay, the first issue was funny, ha, just kind of being cool. The second issue is going to take a serious turn. So I'm looking forward to issue 2. And that is actually going to be hitting shelves April 3rd. So you do want to pick that up. You've got Uncanny X-Men 14 on March 20th. And then Cosmic Ghost Rider destroys Marvel history issue 2, April 3rd. Now, one other book that I quickly want to just kind of touch base on, I forgot to grab the image for it, is Venom issue 11. And I just want to leave with, after the events of issue 10, finding out that Venom has cancer and he's possibly going to die, this book was really slow. However, it was probably the most impactful of the series so far, because we actually learned that Eddie Brock has been living with a lie his entire life, and that lie was forced onto him by the symbiote itself. We are starting to see the symbiote have, I don't know what's the best word to use, but let's just say we're starting to see the symbiote kind of have feelings. And the symbiote is feeling fear, loneliness, wanting. I mean, it's really different approach to what we know as the Venom symbiote. And I think Marvel's still doing really well with the Venom arc. I am excited to see where 12 goes. But this one's a must read. Because it's really, there's one thing that I am not going to spoil 100%, but it is probably the biggest bombshell that Eddie Brock has ever had in his entire comic book history. So that's Marvel. That's what I've been reading. There's a couple other issues that I didn't talk about, and that's Return of Wolverine number 5, which finally ties up all of, the different Return of Wolverine arcs that were out there. And it actually leads into Infinity Watch Wolverine, which, for those of you out there who know about the upcoming Marvel storyline War of the Realms, Infinity Watch is kind of the kicking off point for War of the Realms. And one thing I will talk about in Infinity Watch Wolverine, we are actually introduced to a brand new Wolverine character from far in the future who has the Phoenix Force. And he is a badass looking Wolverine, time traveling and all kinds of stuff. And it's good. It's good for sure. And those are just some books, like I said, that I didn't want to get too much into, but check them out if you're a Wolverine fan. They won't disappoint you.
Definitely need to check out some of those issues. A lot of them sound like they're really starting to take off, especially the Cyclops and Wolverine one, because with the back history of Cyclops and Wolverine, it's always been not exactly the friendliest. So it's cool to see them working together.
Yeah, and for those of you that have been away from comics for a while, you did have, not that long ago, where the X-Men splintered off, and there was one team run by Cyclops and another team run by Wolverine. And they really butt heads big time at that point. So like you said, they've got a serious history, but right now they're managing to kind of put that aside and work towards the greater good. They got to find their friends. Uncanny X-Men is the hot shit for me right now. Yeah,
it definitely sounds like it's really getting intense too.
Yeah, that's right. And we are available on all the major podcast platforms. That's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud. I mean, if it has podcasts, you're going to find Talk Geekly on there. So if this is your first time hanging out with us, don't forget to get on your podcast app, look for us, like, subscribe, do the ratings, do whatever you'd like to do. Go ahead and listen to some of our older issues. We've got our older podcasts. We've got podcasts on Stan Lee, Aquaman, Resident Evil 2. We've done a lot in the few months that we have been doing this podcast.
Absolutely. And while we're at it, be sure to check us out. Talk Geekly. Same name as our Twitch. Same exact universal branding. You can stay up to date with what we're doing on Twitter and Instagram. We like to share news and different pictures on Instagram as well. What's happening in DC and Marvel Universe, just in case you're hungry for a little bit of information in between the podcast. So, do yourself a favor, throw us a follow. It's absolutely free, and we definitely would love to fill your feed with some awesome stuff. Now, while we're on this just awesome momentum, why don't we drop into Anthem? You see what I did there?
Well, Anthem, yeah. I think that is probably right now one of the bigger games that's making huge waves in the gaming circles out there. And whether you like it or not, you cannot deny that it's certainly at the forefront of what's happening with video games.
Absolutely.
I'm digging it.
I, unfortunately, was only able to experience the demo when the beta opened up, the beta. So I'm going to have a little bit to say, but I'm going to let Penn take the wheel for the most part, since he was actually able to play, and I'm pretty sure you completed it, correct?
Oh, no. Well, it's one of those games you can't complete, Okay. This is, you're going to play this game for as long as the game is still online. As long as they have servers, you can't complete it. I have not put in a lot of time in the game because I'm a working man. I work a lot, so I don't spend a lot of time playing games. But I will say I've put 30 hours. I just checked earlier today. I put 30 hours into the game so far. I'm about level 27. My javelin is blue, almost purple. So just right under, epic? Just under epic. So I got a pretty powerful javelin. And let me tell you, I really, really love this game. I think that EA and BioWare are doing right for players like myself. I really like games where you are grinding to get gear and you want that epic loot, that legendary loot that's gonna make you feel powerful. And it's a fun game. The fighting in the game for me, now I never played Destiny 2, I never played Warframe, and I think those are two games that a lot of people try to compare Anthem to, or they compare Anthem to those games. I've never played those games, so I can't say if it's a carbon copy of it or not, but I can say that when I'm jumping in the air, hitting my freaking turbo boost, flying, spinning behind a guy, popping some shots on him, then flying again, shooting some grenades, coming down, slamming the ground, it feels awesome. It feels epic. Like I literally feel like a badass mech pilot just wrecking face.
Now, I would like to interject real quick. With the demo, I did feel a lot of that. The javelin just felt really smooth. The flying the javelin, I will say, felt very fluid. It felt phenomenal. Going into combat was pretty much like the Destiny feel. I've played and completed all of Destiny 1. And although I haven't played Destiny 2, I did play Warframe as well. And I will say it kills it in terms of like a third person loot based shooter. This is coming off of just the beta itself. Now, the one thing I'm curious about, Penn, is my experience with it while it was in the beta. When you're out of the suit and you're walking around in the city, the movement felt really clunky. It didn't feel fluid. And I was curious if that was fixed or patched over, because that was one thing I had an issue with. It felt really awkward walking out of the suit.
See, now I know we had another patch. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or today. I haven't had a chance to hop on the game since the newest patch, but I will say that I'm kind of in the same position you are. I felt like the third person view definitely is a bit awkward. The movements just don't seem as good as that third person view, but you're talking to someone who, first off, despises first-person games. So I've already got a bias straight off the bat when I am forced to walk around this world in first person.
Mm-hmm.
I want to puke. I just know. I want to see myself. I want to feel what my character is, who my character is. When I play the games, and I know this is one of those subjects that it's really touchy for gamers, because some people want to be fully immersed and feel like they are the character in the game. Personally, I want to be a character in the game. So I like to see my character. I like to see that character and then in my head immerse myself in that way, if that makes sense. But you are 100% spot on. It's weird.
And the one thing I'm curious about too, and I don't know if this is kind of like taking a little bit of your mojo juice. Within the demo, the beta, I keep calling it the demo. I wasn't able to really find a lot of upgrades for the javelins. I want to say I only used the one javelin, like the one they encourage people to use. Like it kind of is the Ranger, I think is it called?
I think the Ranger or Storm, one of the two.
Yeah, the Ranger. What type of upgrades did you favor? What type of upgrades were available? Because it looked like the suit had a lot of different upgrades. It really gave me that Ronin Warriors feeling. I don't know if you've ever seen that cartoon from the past, but like how they were able to upgrade like different parts of their suits. It gave me that vibe, but I unfortunately wasn't able to experience that within the game at that time.
Well, so far, I have focused on one javelin. I know that as you progress and level up, you are able to unlock the other javelins, so you can eventually have all of them and then do your missions in different javelins, however you feel. I have been focused on the Colossus.
Which is the tank, correct?
It's more of the big bad boy. And it's just kind of like my play style. It kind of myself in real life. At least I like to think that I'm, I'm a big old bruiser. So that's what I've been playing. And I do play on, right now, I'm still on hard difficulty. I have yet to get high enough level to unlock the higher difficulty. And I think with this game, it's important, if you want to get good loots, you got to play the higher difficulties. That's just, you have more chances to get the better loot.
And I can appreciate that type of game as well.
Yeah, so I've been, like I said, I am just underneath Epic, around level 27, 26, somewhere in there. So I've got a decent javelin. I've got some one-hit killers where when I'm in the middle of a boss fight or something, when those ads come, the mobs are coming, I could just real quick drop a grenade somewhere and clear out a good 15 guys and not spend 3 minutes trying to snipe each one. But it's a lot of fun. I feel like I'm powerful and I'm getting the loots that I want.
So what would you say at this time? What type of rating, like out of 10, would you give this game?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, but I think we're gonna put the rating off for just a moment because I'm singing praises of this game. And I think before we go down to how I'd like to rate the game, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room, right?
Okay.
As much as I like the game, what is it like? Probably, and I'm just making up a number. Let's say 75% of the gaming community hates this game. This game is receiving some really bad reviews. It is being hit left and right by angry gamers all over the place. And I mean, what are your thoughts on the backlash that they're getting for this game?
Well, I have a decent amount of friends that work in the technology field. We're talking repairing PlayStation 4s and rebuilding them. And one of the biggect things I heard, I haven't experienced it or heard of anyone around me experiencing it, is there's a big outlash of PS4 users having their system get bricked by this game. And keep in mind, this is not happening on PC or Xbox One. So it's just PS4 as we know it right now. And that's causing a lot of concern within the gaming community.
Yeah, and then oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna add, it makes me wonder what's causing that. Because I mean, the technology in the PS4 and Xbox One, we can argue and we can go back and forth, but they're pretty much, you know what I mean, like hit or miss in some different areas. They're pretty much similar, and it's making me really question what's causing this within the PS4 itself, and not any other system.
Well, and this is where I'd like to jump in real quick. I'm glad you brought this up first, because this is something we had both talked about on the phone when that report first came out. And I don't know if you remember, I was a bit skeptical about that. I was kind of just like, I don't know. It's a little iffy. Mm-hmm. And then a couple days after that report, a new report was published where that actually never happened. The game is causing the fans to overheat. The game is causing the PS4s to shut off. However, it's not bricking them. They are still working.
Causing a PS4 to shut off like that could potentially brick it. It's not very healthy for the system at all.
I get where you're going with that. But what I'm trying to focus on is this is a coordinated smear campaign. This is a clear indication, because people have been upset with EA for quite a while. And instead of telling the truth, they straight up lied.
So explain Sony issuing full refunds, no questions asked, for PS4 users that bought the game.
But why were they issuing those refunds? Because their technology cannot handle what BioWare has created.
But that doesn't mean
PC player,
systems have not bricked, though.
They have not. They have not bricked.
Do you have any substantial proof of that, though?
I don't have. I should have had the links brought up, but there was a report that was done right after the news had dropped, because EA and BioWare went out and contacted the specific Twitter users who were saying that their consoles were bricked and asked for them to send them the consoles, that they will look into it and they will help them out and figure out what is the problem. Well, out of all the people that actually sent the first off, they barely got any consoles sent in. But the ones they did get sent in were all tampered with. That's shady.
I mean, to be honest, like if my PS4 bricked or shut down and caused some sort of damage to the database or whatever, I would have someone look at it, or I would try to repair it myself. I mean, that's a pretty hefty price to buy. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. You know, I'm sure maybe someone might have been doing some smearing here and there, but the point of the matter is having your system turn off is not good for the system at all. And we can't exactly sit here and say no system got bricked. We could say that maybe the users that were smearing it, their systems weren't exactly bricked, but we can't speak for everyone out there. And you know, I liked Anthem. I'm not trying to smear it myself. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I think that's something important to realize. Having a system shut off.
And I appreciate that. We need that.
Yeah, having a system shut off is something that's it's not good. You don't want that. You know.
No, it is not.
And one of my friends was saying, like, the only way to really safeguard against it was like to do something very specific to the database itself. Like you had to like restructure it in a way, and then that would help defend against it. I'm not very versed in technology, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm miswording that or misquoting him. Right now, you know, I'm not going to go through the bunch of messages to pinpoint exactly what he said, but coming from a dude like who I trust with my technology, who's like fixed my laptops and rebuilt my phones and stuff, like I would trust him when he was, you know, would tell me, you know, like this game is like not good for your system. To, you know, maybe a patch fix that. I'm not exactly sure. And you know what? You could be right. Maybe the PS4 is, you know, inferior in sense of playing this game.
A
compared to the
patch,
Xbox Store.
a patch could fix it. However, the type of patch required would take a lot of resources. This is possibly something that is more or less a restructuring of main game mechanics and resources to bring it to a much easier level for certain lower end computers and and PS4s to handle. And that's something that PlayStation, Sony, for a long time has had the reputation of they will not allow a game company to release a product on their console unless it works 100% and does not cause issues. And if it does cause issues, Sony ends up scrapping it. They have a very long history of doing that. And I wonder why there weren't any red flags brought up when this game was first being in testing on their consoles.
It could be
they had to have caught this.
Lack of quality control. One thing, I do want to play devil's advocate again. We don't know what model PS4 this is affecting.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Because that's one thing to keep in mind. There's been a couple generations. You have your original first gen. Then we had another duplicate of that get dropped. Then we had the Slim. Then we had a Slim Terabyte. Then we had PS4 Pro get introduced. I mean, we don't know exactly what model, what generation is getting affected by this. It might not be all PS4s. There's a lot of variances in this that we haven't been able to really discover or have the resources necessary to research into. So that's one important factor I would like to add as well.
Yeah, I just think, and this is my personal opinion, I have no studies, no information to back this up, but I feel like BioWare was very ambitious in this game. They went balls to the wall and made a beautiful looking world that unfortunately is probably ahead of its time. I think maybe 5 years from now, the technology would be there for the average consumer to enjoy this game in the way it was intended. But right now, I just feel like I said, there probably was poor optimization because the restraints that they had in trying to bring this game to consoles and the average PC that the average person out there has access to. Now, personally, I have an 8770K. That's my CPU. And that runs at about 4.6 gigahertz. I have 32 gigs of memory, DDR4 memory. I am rocking a 970 Pro NVMe SSD from Samsung, which is where my game is installed on. My graphics card is not high end. I am still running a OG 970. However, this game is way more CPU intensive than graphics intensive. I'm able to run the game at ultra settings. I get about 75 to 80 frames per second on average on ultra. And my load times, and that's the big thing, is people are noticing big issues with the load times. My load times are anywhere from about, I'd say 25 to 45 seconds top. And that's a long time. I'm used to mere seconds, 5, 6, non-existent load times. So I will definitely say, again, even with all the good shit I have in my computer, that's why I feel like they bit off more they can chew in the realm of giving it to the masses. Not everyone has the shit that I have. And not everyone has the shit that's even better than the shit I have. You know, like, this game is really, really intensive. And we just don't have the tech in everyone's hands for them to enjoy it.
So, I'll ask again, man. What do you think? Out of a scale of 10, would you say this game falls? And if you could, list your reason why you gave that score.
Okay. So now I'm good to give my score on this game. I'm going to go with a 7. And now I am having a lot of fun, like I said earlier. I really enjoy this game. However, the one thing that is keeping me from giving it a much more favorable score, like a 8, 9, or a 10, I feel like 7's kind of, you know, it's just above average. You know, 7's like, all right, this is a good game. The reason I'm sticking with a 7 is, as of right now, I feel like there still is not enough. I don't want to use the word content, because that's what everyone is saying. Everyone's like, well, there's not enough.
Endgame?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, that's true.
So you know what I mean? I can't comment on Endgame, but I feel like the way missions are kind of given to you and the way you go about traveling the world, I feel it's a bit wonky. And I think they would have done better having NPCs just scattered throughout a little bit more. And when you were free roaming, you could just stumble across someone, find a bunch of quests or missions, however you want to call it. And that would be a lot more fun. And that maybe that's what happens at Endgame. I don't know. So that's where, like, I'm just giving how I feel right now, where I'm at in the game. Hopefully that is what happens in Endgame, because I'm kind of worried, you know, when I get to Endgame, what do? Just keep doing free roam and hope that some enemies spawn for me to kill? Because that's gonna suck.
Yeah,
I guess you could do strongholds.
The biggest thing with these type of games is the end game. That's the biggest thing, I feel, at least in my personal opinion, with games like this. Like Division 1. When it first dropped, I played it nonstop. I almost platinumed it within the first week or two. That was actually the first game I actually was involved with when Twitch, you know, when I joined Twitch. And the end game on that was just lackluster. They didn't fix anything until the updates, and by that point, I lost interest. And a lot of other people did too. And I'm really curious as to how this end game, you know, because end games will make or break a game. So yeah. I mean, eventually, I'm probably gonna pick it up and play it. But it's really gonna fall on if the end game is good or if it's a flop.
Yeah, but I'm gonna continue playing it because one other thing that which I failed to mention is, at some point in time, you have to give a video game company the ability, the moment to redeem themselves.
Yeah.
And for me, this is that moment for EA, for BioWare. I'm not going to get stuck on what they did in the past, because everyone can change and they learn their lesson. There are no microtransactions that affect gameplay. All the microtransactions are cosmetic. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut about hating on them. I'm going to play the game that they came out with, and I'll enjoy it.
All right. Well, I guess it's my time to give my thoughts on Metro Exodus.
Yeah, what's up with Metro Exodus?
Well, I will start this off by saying I'm a big fan of the Metro series. I'm a big fan of first-person shooters, survival horrors. I love it. I cannot get enough of those games. So mine, you might think I'm going to be biased on this game, but I'm going to give as much of a brutal breakdown of it as possible. Now with Metro Exodus, it's the game starts out a quarter century after post-apocalyptic nuclear war, just devastating the Earth. With Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light, we were led to believe that maybe a few hundred people survived. there was no breathable air above the metro system. Like we're in the metro system of like Moscow, Russia. And believe me when I say the first 2 games, anytime you go above the tunnels, you are forced to wear a gas mask. You're looking for air filters. You're constantly hoping that you have enough air filters to survive. In those 2 previous games, they used military rounds as not only currency, but ammunition that dealt extremely more efficient damage compared to the regular ammunition you would find. Now, this is where Metro Exodus shines. They scrapped that completely. With Metro Exodus, you are crafting resources, crafting ammunition. I would like to stop myself right here, and I want to make this really clear for you guys too. I played on Ranger Hardcore, which completely eliminates the HUD at all. So you have no idea, where you're going unless you look at, you can pop up the lighter flame, and you also do get the compass as well. So they do a lot of homage to the first 2 games in that sense. Outside of that,
do you think that really amped up the suspense while you were playing?
Extremely. Because with military rounds, like I said, that's currency, but that also deals a lot more damage. So I played Ranger Hardcore, or whatever I'm pretty sure it was Ranger Hardcore on both titles. And when you're backed on a wall, you could hurry up and switch in that military round and get that extra oomph in areas you get stuck on. Now with this, you are stuck looting and shooting, and if you find a gun on the ground, you take the ammunition from it. It is well done. It is well done. I will say that for the most part, for someone who's a huge fan of survival horror, this is exactly the route they needed to go with this. Now, I'm going to try to remain spoiler-free with the story, because with these games, with single-player games, the story is the biggest part of it. There's 2 different endings. Oh, go ahead.
Are there no multiplayer modes? I've never played a Metro game.
No. With Metro 2033, Metro Last Light, and Metro Exodus. I see, for the longest time, I always called it Exodus, and I was doing so good. But
here's my track card.
There's no multiplayer at all. You could actually pick up 2033 and Last Light in the Metro Redux. So if you guys are interested, I would highly recommend it. But the thing is, Metro Exodus is a great standalone game. You don't need to play the previous 2 titles to enjoy the game. Playing them, I think, builds the suspension for you. It builds the anticipation, because you get to know the characters. With single player driven games, you get to know and you get the feel for the character. So playing them will give you a good feel for it, but you don't necessarily have to play them at all. I'll give you an example. It's like you could watch any Marvel movie, but by watching the other ones, it makes your experience a little bit more. You're able to pick up on Easter eggs. You're able to pick up on like different scenarios where this happened, and you're like, oh man, this was mentioned in this. Like, it gives you that feeling. But back on the subject, this is a great standalone game. You don't need to play the previous 2 titles, and the way they execute the transition from the Metro system to above ground is just spectacular. And we're going to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, but just to kind of give you an idea, we're led to believe everyone is dead above ground. There's no breathable air. Then we get to a situation where we find out that's not true. And it is pretty groundbreaking. We find out that you can breathe just fine. We find out that there was jammers on the satellites that blocked radio communication from Russia to all around the world.
I'm never going to play the game. That's it. I could breathe. Radio jam. You spoiled it. I'm done. Just joking. That's the least, because with the trailers, you see you see them above ground riding on the trains and everything. So it's beautiful to see this whole entire world just light up with radio signals and transmissions everywhere. And for me, having played the previous 2 titles, it really built up the anticipation. And I was just like, oh man, this is wild. So I have a question. Now, do you feel like this game possibly is the end of the series, or are we going to see another one?
I don't want to talk about that just
Okay.
because
All right.
just because it could lead into a lot of different ways. Like I said, with every game, the game has mortality? No, morality. There it is. Morality system, where if you don't kill people in the game, you'll get a good morality point. If you do certain quests and save certain people, you'll get morality points. It was the same in Metro 2033 and Last Light. You could play these games without killing a single human for the most part, unless you're fully required to. You can very well go stealthy. These type of games, for anyone that has not played it, and for our audio listeners, you have night vision goggles, you have flashlights. It's a survival horror to its essence. So you could turn off the turn off the lights, put on the night vision goggles, shoot out lamps, turn out lights, and just go full force like stealth. Go up to different enemies and knock them out, strip them of their ammo and stuff. With this game, it does so much more than Last Light and Metro 2033 even imagined. You're able to fully upgrade Artyom's suit. He wears a different suit, so you can scope it to your liking, whether you want to hold more ammunition or more throwables. You can get a more reinforced helmet. You get a bracer this time around that can have a compass on it telling you where to go. My personal favorite was a metal detector because I was playing on Ranger Hardcore, so resources were extremely limited for me. So this metal detector was very nice because it would tell me where resources was when I got close to it, and then I was able to look for it and find it. I will say this, my experience with this game, and I heard it was an option you could turn off. So personally, I didn't do it, but I heard it was an option. With the previous two titles, when you eliminate the HUD, there's no indication of what you're supposed to do. If you go up to a door, it doesn't tell you to open it. You just have to press the button to open it and hope that it opens. When you hit a cutscene, it doesn't tell you what button to press. So when you die, you have to restart and do it again. This time, you start the Ranger Hardcore with the ability for it to tell you when to open the door and such. So I'll make a note of that. I was not particularly fond of that, but with the option to turn it off, it would make the better if you're a tryhard like myself. Now, that's just a little bit of praising. I will say the character development was second to none. It was just beautiful the way they scripted it, and you're not in a metro tunnel at all. You are spawning across several different seasons. So you're in summer, you're in fall, you're in winter. It's just the underlining dread and fear that develops in the game as you're fighting different bandits, involved in civil war. It's spectacular. You have all these different mutants that we were used to. Now, within the first one and the second one, there were dark ones, which are kind of like a paranormal type of creature. In the first one, they were evil, they were the antagonist, but in the second one, they were the protagonist. So it was kind of a weird toss-up. That's completely thrown out. There's a little bit of paranormal activity in the game, but nothing that was nearly as in-depth as the first two. We're more or less exposed to more mutated creatures. I know if you guys seen the E3 reveal, you saw the mutant bear. Beautiful fight. And more or less just more of humans and more like civil warfare. You have all these bandits spread out across the continents, holding their own little settlements. And it's more of an open world experience as well. You get introduced to a continent, and then you could fully explore each individual area. You don't have to necessarily go to the point of interest. So I really enjoyed that part too.
Now, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, you're fine.
I was able to hang out a couple times on your stream. And for those of you that do not watch Job for a Cody, please check them out. Twitch.tv/job_4. That's FOR _A_ Cody. He does a lot of games, new games, old school games. He's a hardcore gamer. But I was able to hang out in your stream a couple times, and the one time that I will never forget is your adventure in the lighthouse. So for people who haven't played the game and are going to play the game, maybe there's something you'd like to share with them so they don't deal with the similar issues that you had to deal with.
Yes. I will say this. I was getting ready to, with a lot of praise, bring to you guys the brutal truth. I promised you I wouldn't be biased, And here we go. Aspen level, I think I'm pronouncing that right. You're supposed to go to a lighthouse. Now, after a big battle, you kill everybody. This lady's supposed to drop a boat for you to get into the lighthouse. Now, I will say I wasn't very active on Twitter or on any form of social media. I try to keep this game as spoiler-free as possible, but eventually I had a cave. Eventually, after 6 hours on Ranger Hardcore, and keep in mind, on Ranger Hardcore, 2 shots and you're dead. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they shoot you in the arm. You pretty much could get shot by a wall, and the ricochet from it would kill you. So it's very, very nerve-wracking to have to go through a level and die endlessly, trying to figure out what's going on. This was a game-breaking bug. I almost said groundbreaking as well, because it broke my immersion and experience. It broke me as a person, because I looked up. I had to look, I try my best not to look up guides or what to do, but I looked up a guide, and to my undying, relentless fury, after you kill everybody, she's supposed to drop the boat. So I'm just like, what's going on here? So I decided to put, lighthouse boat glitch. Come to find out, in that level, there's a glitch where she won't drop the boat, no matter how many times you restart. With a regular playthrough, keep in mind, this is from what people who came into the stream that beat the game told me. On a regular playthrough, you could save. You can, at any point, you could save the game, do a quick save. With Ranger Hardcore, you fall on a quick save basis. So I would get pushed back like 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes you get pushed back a half an hour. When you go in the game on Ranger Hardcore, you get workbenches. That's where you upgrade weapons, you upgrade ammunition, throwables. In Ranger Hardcore, you got about a fourth of those in the entire game. So it's a very rage-inducing experience. To fix this glitch, you have to reset the whole entire chapter. So keep in mind, I'm a very in-depth person when I play games like this. I make sure to explore everything as much to a T as humanly possible. I'll go through the map and I'll cover everything I could. Well, you best believe when I reset this chapter, I just gunned it straight forward. I was done exploring. I was done with my exploration. It really was infuriating to find out that I had to reset the whole entire chapter. Because one thing I will say that leads me into another issue is it's a really cool experience to ride the train, but it's incredibly boring. Sure, you get the little moments of dialogue where you can talk and discover people, but you just walk and you can sit on the train and it just keeps cycling over and over and over until you go to the map to start the thing. And it seems like they could have really spent a little bit less time on the train. I mean, there's times where I spent like 15, 20 minutes just bored out of my mind, just ready to get into the level. And keep in mind, this game was pretty exhilarating and very exciting when the action happened. But there are some extremely slow pacing going on as well. The ammo crafting was really cool. I really liked how they did that. The guns, they really took note of Last Light and went balls to the walls with guns. You could pick up different attachments, different combinations of how you make the gun. So you can hold 2 different guns and make one more of a silenced gun, and then one that is going to go loud and produce a lot of damage. It was really cool to see that happen. But once again, some of the pacing in the game was just ridiculously slow. While other times it was insane. Other times I'd be walking and then I'd be involved with a firefight with a bandit and, reserving as much ammunition as I can. And then next thing I know, this demon sweeps down and picks me up and flies meters into the air and just throws me to the ground and I die. Like, it's insane. You bring back the Watchmen, which are think of like feral mutant dogs, type of, like looking like like Wolverine type looking dogs. It's insane. You could randomly find a pack of them and the next thing you know, you're running for your life. Very well done in that sense. The suspense is really well done, but I will say the glitching in the game, I experienced so many different glitches. The loading times themselves, sometimes I was experiencing anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Now, I played this on the PS4. So I will say this. It might be different for other console or PC. 5 to 10 minutes. Now, each level is so intricately designed. It's one of those things like, I kind of see why the loading time was so bad. But with that, I don't want to wait 5-10 minutes. I want to get in the game. I want to jam. But with, keeping in mind, the levels are just so well crafted and just gorgeous. The graphics in this game were just amazing. I had so many people come in and say, this is what Fallout 76 should have been. We're seeing just everywhere is just ravished by, radiation and broken down buildings and shacks just, hastily constructed. It was a really awesome experience. And I will say the story just, if anything, if you play this, the story is just beautiful. I really didn't have a lot of issues with the story per se. Like besides the slow pacing here and there, the way the story was structured and the way it followed through was awesome. And the potential for a different, not so much a completely new game, but the ability to save people and have people return, it adds a little bit, you want to do another playthrough to save that person, to see how this game follows through, to see what type of ending you get. So I will say,
it sounds like to me, you definitely had fun with this game. So let's get to that score. What are you going to give Metro Exodus?
I will say with some of the glitches I experienced, we're talking, falling through rocks. There was points where I, fell through the map. I had a lot of issues sometimes with what's that called? The bullet drop. I would try to stay at a distance, and there'd be times where I know I hit the person. I would hear the ping, and it would not give me the headshot. So I know there was issues with the bullet, like registering a kill shot. Given the 5 to 10 minute load screen, and that was very problematic. The glitch I experienced at the lighthouse, I had another friend do a playthrough, and he experienced a glitch where his night goggles would not trigger, and it should have triggered. I would probably say, with those issues that I experienced, while keeping in mind, the praise I had, I would probably give it, because the glitches, it didn't, for that one level, that lighthouse level, after 6 hours of trying to figure it out, if I was to play this through, because they could have patched it already. I already beat the game. The game came out February 15th. I want to say I beat it on Ranger Hardcore just the 1st of March. So no, about the 4th of March. I will say, without that glitch, I definitely would have been fully immersed. This was a hard game for me not to play while I didn't stream. I only play these games when I stream. So when I take a night off, I don't touch the game. It was a very hard game for me not to play, during my off time. So it's one of those games, if you're looking for a single player horror, survival horror, I would highly recommend it, especially if you didn't play the other two. If you played the other two and you were kind of on the fence about this game, I recommend it fully. Okay, I would give it a 9 out of 10 if you played the other two.
I think you cut out when you gave your number score. So if you just like to repeat that one more time, because I did not get it.
I would say it's an 8 out of 10. But if you played the other two games, that adds a little bit more oomph to the story. And I would say it's definitely a 9 out of 10 in that scenario. Did you hear my explanation why?
Oh, yes. Everything else came through perfectly. It was just right when you went to give your score, it kind of dipped out for a moment. So,
bearing in mind, every game's going to have a few issues. I'm not playing devil's advocate here. I wanted to acknowledge the issues, the glitches that I experienced. I will say that Ranger Hardcore for me was a very rage-inducing experience. So I try to keep that in mind when talking about the game. I don't want to reflect on how much anger I had, like when I would die, because that falls on me. That doesn't fall on the game. But the glitches were very infuriating at times. But I really like the new spin they gave. Is the potential for a new title there? Maybe. More than likely DLC. That's where a lot of games are heading, is the DLC realm. Instead of coming out with a brand new game, they would much rather come out with a $10-15 DLC package to encourage a little bit more cash coming back to the developers and what have you. But who's to say we might get a brand new? I want to say the books. If you follow the books, I'm not exactly sure if any other books came out after the one that follows this one in particular. But you're just gonna have to play and see.
All right, awesome. I'm glad you had fun with the game. Basically generally had fun with the game, because I'm telling you guys, you gotta watch Job for Cody. It's a very fun stream, and that night of the lighthouse was it was epic. It was epic to say the least. We are going to be talking about Captain Marvel.
So there's your spoiler-free warning. Make sure, when we get ready to talk about it, we're going to be talking about it pretty in depth. We're not going to talk, I wouldn't say we're going to do a play-by-play of the plots, but we're going to talk about very interesting points in the story. So it's a very good possibility it might spoil the experience for you. So we'd like to give that little bit of a 5-minute window for anyone listening to kind of dip out, and we completely understand because, as comic, enthusiasts, nothing's worse than having your firsthand experience ruined.
Alrighty, so I think it might be important to kind of start off with somewhat of a preface before we fully go into details on the movie and things like that. At least for me, this is important. Before this movie came out, there were lots and lots of negative reviews saying the movie was bad, basically a call to boycott the film. And that actually led to Rotten Tomatoes deleting, so I think it's somewhere upwards to 50,000 reviews,
yeah,
something like that.
Reviews.
Yeah. And that led to an even larger backlash because there were uninformed people who didn't understand the full spectrum of what was going on with the reasoning for deleting those reviews. Those reviews were from people who never saw the movie. The movie was not available for just everyone to watch. Everyone who at that time had saw the film had signed an agreement to not discuss the film nor review the film in any way, shape, or form. These are actually reviews that were put there with malicious intent. So like I said, I wanted to have a small preface and kind of the movie already, before even hitting theaters, was marred in controversy from people who were angry. So with that being said, we're kind of at the same. Go ahead. What's up?
I would like to add that playing devil's advocate here, there was a couple accounts, fake accounts, that gave exactly the opposite of what happened with the negative reviews. Let me find it again. And these accounts all had different names, variations of how they spelled their names, making it look like they were from different parts of the world. They all say the same thing, copy and pasted across multiple different accounts. I'll make it very simple and clear. Captain Marvel is really worth a watch. It's just entertaining and visually impressive. Exactly what it was meant to be. Just keep this in mind that it's an origin story. So don't go looking for an overstuffed, complex story. It's just a fun action movie, that intro, and that's where it stopped. You could click more and read more. But this was not just one or two. It was, the screenshot shows at least 6, indicating that there was I can't say there was thousands of people, but just seeing 6 people say the same thing, copy and paste, it goes to show you that this was working on both ends.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The negative reviews,
I see what you're saying.
And the positive reviews.
I
so
think
there might.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue, please.
There might be more involved with this than what we're led to believe. I want to say, and without getting too in depth, I don't want to get too in depth with this, But I want to say that I read an article where the government is looking at how people review movies and how they vet reviews. So we could see some big changes in how movies are reviewed after all of this is said and done.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. But I want to comment just real quickly on the fact that that message, copy paste, word for word, and I'm not gonna just straight up advocate, you know, that kind of shadiness. However, I am willing to give a pass to something of that level in the sense that it's not derogatory, it's not malicious, it is not in any way trying to shit on someone because you hate them. Now, when you are making a coordinated assault in a way to hurt someone's livelihood, that I cannot get behind. I cannot give you a pass on that. So like I said, I understand it's definitely shady, it's definitely weird, but at least for me, I'm willing to overlook it because I don't see the harm in that statement.
You don't see the harm in people copy and pasting that thing and trying to get people to look at something where they could have potentially not even seen the movie. These could be fake accounts from one person.
Yeah, I get that. What I'm saying is I don't see the harm in telling someone, hey, go check it out. It's good. You know, because what one person doesn't like doesn't necessarily mean, you know, what I like, you may like. What you like, I may like, and vice versa, right? But not giving something the opportunity, you'll never know whether you like it. So if we only had negative reviews, then no one is going to go out there and experience things. Does that make any sense?
No, it does. It does. But I would say, I'm trying to think of how I could word this. I would say the average person should be capable enough to want to find that out for themselves. Sure, like I'll give a prime example. The Han Solo movie. I heard a lot of bad reviews and a lot of mixed reviews, but I did my research and, you know, I made my own opinion on that movie outside of what I read about it and heard about it. And no, you know, everyone might not be the same. They might not reflect upon things like that in the same nature. But I would go as far as to say that a lot of people have been told something and then they were able to make their own formal opinion. I feel that there's a lot more involved with this than what we're being led to believe. And it makes sense that I read that article about how the government wants to really change. And once again, take this for what you want. Please do your own research in the matter, because nothing's really 100% solid right now. This is still up in the air, but this could very well lead to how reviewers review movies, which that in itself could be a really, really bad thing. Movies really affect the masses, and they really have a way of directing people and directing people and their thinking patterns. And it's kind of similar to how like certain books get banned, you know, like in schools, like books that really open you up to a different sense of thinking and thinking patterns. If we allow reviewers not to be able to review movies in their own words, that spells trouble. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know if that's gonna ever be a thing, just because in order to get to that level, you would basically be dealing with infringing on freedom of speech. And in this country, there's two things for the most part that are probably the most controversial freedoms And anytime there is an attack on it, there is a huge uproar, and that's freedom of speech and guns. We like to talk shit and we like to shoot shit.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. But with that in mind, we've already seen it happen. We've seen books get banned from schools.
Yeah, but books being banned from school, that's from a school. Like, you can still go out and buy that book. The government isn't redacting words in the book. They aren't, they're not going to publishers saying, hey, these words cannot be published. This mindset cannot be published. If they go to that level, then we have a big problem.
And that's a very valid point. But let me play devil's advocate here. Some of those books that were banned, would you ever read those outside of school? Like, these are, I mean, I'd have to look up the titles in particular, but these are books like that we read like what, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, back when I was going to school, which was, 15 years ago. And now they're not even being, you're not allowed to read them in school. You're not allowed to teach them in school. And it's really troubling to think. And once you think about it as a whole, you have Rotten Tomatoes deleting 50,000 negative reviews. That's a lot. That is something that's stirring the pot. And then you have,
but those reviews came without seeing the movie. They should have never been allowed to do that. And now they have a system in place where if the movie has not been released, you cannot place a review. That's legit. Everything else, I'm 100% on board with you. But as far as that Rotten Tomato thing is, that should have never happened.
Well, neither should like the multiple accounts copy and pasting the same message either.
I don't. It's debatable.
It is, and it might not be something that's really affecting the livelihood of the actors or the movie's success, but it's encouraging people to watch a movie that the dude probably didn't even watch, since it's copy and paste on multiple different accounts.
Yeah,
but I feel like we're kind of getting off tangent here, because this is
that's the thing. A lot of this is super important to this movie, and the reason it's super important, and I'm gonna really quickly, one last thing, is the reason all of this backlash happened is because Brie Larson decided that she wanted to have a voice for women and people of color and people who are misrepresented in Hollywood. As soon as she started making her voice be heard, that's when these bad reviews happened. And the attack on her feminism began. So with that word feminism being thrown in there, let's go ahead and talk about Captain Marvel. Let's talk about the movie. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the movie, Cody?
I watched this without spoiling anything, outside the trailer. I didn't read reviews. I stayed off. Whenever I go to watch a Marvel movie or a DC movie or play a game, this is my protocol. I'll get on Facebook and do my in real life stuff. I try to stay away from Twitter. I try to stay away from Instagram. And I most certainly don't get on Google, and I don't type in anything that's close to the movie itself. I try to stay as blind to the movie as possible. I will say this was a good movie. I will say it's definitely a movie that's worth a watch. It's a nice introductory to Captain Marvel. I loved how they introduced the Skrulls. The Skrulls are a really key element in Marvel. And for our readers and listeners, it's one of those things where this is going to potentially lead, into an awesome arc. There's so much potential that we could do just from this introductory. We see a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of 90s references, which I thought was really awesome and enjoyable. There's a lot of loose ends that get tied up, and I feel like there's some questions that do get answered. I will say one of the most, how do I word this? One of the things that really went against the grain, I guess is the best way to word it, was more or less the musical score. The music was awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, the songs, fantastic. I was a big fan of the songs, but it felt like the songs were thrown into an element where they didn't serve a purpose besides being kind of that throw out to the fans out there, like, showing the fans a little bit of love. Guardian of the Galaxy, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but Guardian of the Galaxy 1 and 2 killed it. Their musical scores fit the element, they fit the emotional atmosphere of the movies to almost a perfected T. Now, when it comes to Captain Marvel, and I know, Penn, when we talked, you said you really don't pay attention to the music. You more or less pay attention to like the action and the story development. But like for me, I try to stay grounded and I try to look out for everything. I think music adds a really big value to movies if done correctly. It builds the tension, it builds the suspension, and it gets you more involved. And while the music was really, really good, the songs were awesome, it didn't feel, they felt out of place in some of the scenes they were introduced to. And that was one of my biggest problems. I will say, when the action was going, the action was good.
What would you say, which song was the most
I'm trying
kind of just thrown out of nowhere for you?
I know there was a Nirvana song that was thrown in the scene, and I was like, wow, this is a good song, but this kind of feels really out of place. I can't remember exactly which one it was.
And the reason I asked that is because when we did talk about it, and I said, I don't really pay attention to music during the movies and stuff like that, I decided on my second watch, I was going to pay a little more attention to music. And I believe, and this is when you watch a movie and you have a little notebook where you're writing stuff down throughout the movie, you're taking it serious, And let's see if I can, here we go. So the actual song in question that you just mentioned, it was Come As You Are. And this song is played during a very important part of her storyline where she has just more or less, this movie is sort of a discovery. She is discovering who she is. And at this point in the movie, she is doing exactly what that song says. So after having, like I said, I decided during my second watch, I was going to pay attention to this. And it was like, wait, Come As You Are? Okay. She's in there. She has finally discovered who she is. And I felt like that song definitely fit the situation and scene that it was in.
Well, yeah, musical preference is a big thing here too.
Yeah. And let's stay in music here because later on in the film, and this goes back to the feminism and how much the movie has been attacked for its feminist views. During one of the big action sequences in the film, the song I'm Just a Girl plays. And I mean, she is a girl, right? That song worked, and it's a nice upbeat song. I felt like that song really fit that scene, and it is a song about not necessarily a powerful woman, but a chick doing what she wants to do. So I felt like that was another song that really fit the look and feel and what was going on at the time in the movie. So I mean, you talked about music, so I just kind of wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts compared Guardian of the Galaxy, their soundtrack compared to this one? Just curious.
Well, Guardians of the Galaxy, completely different film. That movie was a kid ripped away from his home and his mom, and all he had was that Walkman with the sounds of the time from when he was taken. So I feel like the soundtrack to that movie, 100%, hands down, way better. I mean, there's no argument there.
How many Marvel movies really had as much on the music as these two? I mean, Iron Man had AC/DC. I think, a couple other movies had maybe clips of songs here and there, but these two are really the more prominent ones that focused on the songs. And the songs were the emotional, atmosphere, as you explained perfectly with Come As You Are. I'm just curious about how you scale the two.
Well, like I said, Guardians of the Galaxy, hands down, as far as a soundtrack is concerned, is the best out there for using popular music. Music, it's not just about the score, orchestra and all that. This is a film that really used radio hits to help tell the story.
I would probably argue that Captain Marvel used more popular songs.
That's just a term I'm using for, it's not orchestra stuff, it's not. Yeah. When I say popular hits, I'm just saying stuff that was on the radio, stuff that you could hear when you turn on 92.3 Talk Geekly FM.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy definitely is the better film as far as that's concerned. But going back, to just the movie itself, you said you felt it was good. You enjoyed it, right?
Yeah, for the most part, I thought it was okay. I didn't have any huge issues with it, really. Some of the pacing was a little other parts, but it did good at developing an origin. It did good at more or less, developing character, developing character relationship. Captain Marvel's relationship with Fury. I thought that was really, done well. I liked how they did the 90s, take on everything. Like, Fury had like a little bit of a fro going on instead of being completely bald. Like, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I'm in the same place as you. I enjoyed the film. Like I told you off stream, it's not the best film. It's not groundbreaking. There's nothing in it that puts it in the top 3 of Marvel films of all time. However, it is still a good watch. It's enjoyable. I felt, for me personally, and I've watched the film twice now, the second time, my opinion did not change. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. It is a story of someone on the path of self-discovery. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it really does the character justice. And, we try to keep our movie reviews spoiler free, but there is a scene for me that, after she has, come to terms with who she is and what she can do, she just flexes, like straight up flexes on the villain. And it's kind of this cool moment where at that point, like, okay, Avengers Endgame is going to be serious because we know Captain Marvel's going to be there. And in this film, just seeing what she can do and the kind of bravado that she brings with her, it has me excited to see what happens between her and Thanos.
Yeah.
Now, as I prefaced our review, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Well, I just wanted to, as I was saying at the beginning of this review, there was a lot of controversy with this film. And I do want to talk about it because I don't want to say I necessarily felt attacked, but a lot of times I personally, I like to fight for the little guy. I have very strong beliefs, and I'm a bit of a asshole at times, but secretly I do have a heart and I do care for people. And this movie is being treated as some sort of subliminal feminist propaganda. A lot of people that I know personally have just laid it into me how the film is just full of this feminist Disney happy, oh my God. And I could not find it. and I'm a conspiracy theorist nut. When I watch things, I'm always looking for how the government is slipping in their propaganda. And I couldn't find it. And that's why I had my notebook. So I kind of want to break down some of these feminist theories that people have. So 15 minutes into the movie, there's a comment where we have two characters going to fly some planes, and they simply say, about to show these boys how we do it. Okay. That's instance one that I could see someone looking for a feminist propaganda could construe that as feminist propaganda. But I mean, personally watching the film, it was at a time where women in the Air Force, you know, they weren't necessarily allowed to fly in missions and things like that. So just two females, you know, pretty excited to get to fly a plane, you know, say, hey, talking shit to each other like, yeah, let's show these boys how we do it. I don't see the problem there.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I mean, if it was vice versa, I'm sure we would get the same backlash if it was two dudes saying, let's show these girls how we do it.
But that's the problem, where this movie, if you replace the character with a guy, there is no sexist agenda. I felt like after watching this film the second time around, you see that this is simply, at one point, a couple reviews that I read after seeing the movie were talking about how this is a story of a female being held down by a male. But in reality, it's a teacher trying to calm down his unruly student so that they don't make brash and impulsive decisions.
See, I could see that. I could see where you're coming from. And I could see if someone was looking to stretch this out to fit that agenda where they could see it. And I could see it if the gender roles were reversed as well. Like, I'm not here saying that this fits the agenda that the other people are saying. But I could see where if someone's trying to stretch it, they're going to find it. Like, that's a problem with any movie. If you're trying to put it in a bad light, you could find any reason and call it whatever you want. And that's a big issue I think we need to address as well too. If you're looking to pick a fight with something, like you're gonna find something if you look hard enough, even if it's nothing. And then that's the problem. That's why I mentioned earlier, if it was two dudes saying let's go, show these girls what's up, I'm sure we would have people saying that this was male bullshit or male propaganda or males are pigs. Like, if people are looking to dissect something to that minute of a level, you could fit it to any agenda you want to, really.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that people are doing exactly what you said. They are breaking down things that don't really need, there is no underlying, like I said, if you replace those two characters, gender swap them, no one would be saying that the female character is holding down the man. You get what I'm saying? It was literally just a teacher trying to get his student to be the best that they could be. And why? Very important to the story. Because that student is the most powerful freaking thing in probably the known universe, known actual entity at that time. They want to weaponize her. So it makes sense in the context of the story.
Well, we've seen the same thing happen with Star Wars: The Last Jedi, or
yeah.
Which one was?
Yeah. You can't have a strong woman.
And I think some of this might have to do with Disney taking things over. You know, that might be another topic for another podcast. But I mean, it's really profound that these big issues are happening with Disney related properties.
Well, I want to end it by saying, hey, I recommend the film. Okay. I recommend it. I think you need to go and see that movie and not have the preconceived notion that leave any sort of agendas at the door. Watch the movie and see it without those kinds of ideas in your mind.
Yeah.
And just take it for what it is. It's a superhero film. It's fun. There's action. There's awesome graphics. And it's continuing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's continuing a story that, for the most part, if you're not just a comic fan, but if you're an avid moviegoer, it's a storyline that you have been following for more than 10 years now. And it's ushering in the next phase.
Yeah,
so would you recommend
really excited.
it?
I would say it's definitely worth a watch. I mean, once again, I thought it was good. I don't think it holds weight. I mean, following up after Infinity War, like Infinity War really upped the ante. It really boosted the bar. And I mean, I think, I think it's going to be a good watch. I definitely feel like it adds value to the story. It adds a lot of, like I said, it answers some questions. It has really awesome, Easter eggs and such. But it did at times, some of the pacing, you kind of felt hit or miss. Some of the scenes I felt maybe could have been a little bit more in depth. Maybe was a little too in depth, but the character development overall was, I think, perfect for an origin story. And it really, I'm not gonna lie, it really is getting me hyped. I really want to see what she's capable of, in Endgame. Oh wait, I meant Infinity War. Did I say Infinity Endgame? I meant Infinity War. Up the ante. I'm excited to see what she does in Endgame because she's confirmed for Endgame, right? She's gonna be in it, correct?
Oh yeah, she's very, very important to that story.
The only thing we are unsure of at this time is Adam Warlock, and that's because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is pretty much on hold right now, correct?
Yeah, that is right. And he was supposed to make a big splash in 3, and that would have eventually tied into Endgame. So Who knows what Marvel has decided to do to wrap up that part of their epic movie saga.
Now, real quick, Pendragon and myself, might have a lot more to say about our thoughts on how Captain Marvel is going to tie into Endgame, potentially what we could see, potentially what could happen. We do have a Patreon, and we are going to be working on videos to add to that Patreon. So that could be a video you could be on the lookout for potentially in the future. Because that's going to be, I feel like that could be a really great discussion where we could really throw around some really good ideas, throw our weight of comic book knowledge. Because a lot of these movies draw from the books. They might not be word for word, but the essence of what happens, happens in a lot of the different movies. Like Thor Ragnarok was what, Planet Hawk and a Thor line combined. So you see a lot of different comic books influencing these movies in different arcs. So, that could be something you could be on the lookout for. We definitely would love to hear from you guys, things you would want to see. Because we would love to do, hero versus hero or, villain versus villain or whatever. Maybe we do, individual breakdowns of past arcs that lead up to the movie as well. Because we still have, 7 weeks?
So it's something around there. It'll be in April where we get to see Endgame. So not that far away. And I'm really hyped for Endgame. Now, for those of you who do want to get a hold of us in another form, if you want to send us an email, do not hesitate to send us an email at wearetalkgeekly@gmail.com. That's wearetalkgeekly@gmail.com. We'd love to read your thoughts on not just the podcast, but like Cody said, things you'd like to see us tackle perhaps in the future episode or even on YouTube and things like that.
We also do have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well, and that is just Talk Geekly, one word. Feel free to hit us up on any of those platforms as well. We definitely would love to see, questions and messages, because we want to give you guys exactly what you want. And, that's the love of all things nerd and geek culture.
So thanks again, guys, for joining us as we made our triumphant return into the podcast realm. And we can't wait to see you next time on another awesome episode of Talk Geekly.
What's that in the sky? It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Talk